Welcome to this explainer. If you're involved in pharma, you already know that the stakes literally couldn't be higher. Patient safety is everything. So today we're going to dive into a highly critical section of India's updated Schedule M. Specifically, we're zeroing in on points 6 through 10 of the main principles for good manufacturing practices. We're going to decode the 5 absolute must-have safety nets that manufacturers are legally required to deploy to keep defective drugs out of the hands of patients. Our safety net narrative is going to cover 5 key areas today: complaints and adverse reactions, defective product recalls, formal change control systems, contract production and analysis, and finally, self-inspections and quality audits. We are going to start with the highly reactive emergency measures and work our way all the way back to the proactive systemic controls. All right, let's jump right into Section 1. Complaints and adverse reactions. This perfectly aligns with point 6 of the main principles. So, what actually happens when a patient or healthcare provider reports an issue with a medication? This is the ultimate high-stakes scenario, right? Well, when a complaint rolls in, the regulations don't leave room for panic. They mandate an immediate, highly structured response. A complaint absolutely cannot just be brushed off. It has to be treated as a potential systemic failure until proven otherwise. Schedule M doesn't mess around here. It requires a designated person, backed by enough staff, to log every single detail of that complaint. They've got to investigate the root cause, and they have to do it side by side with quality control. But here is the real kicker. They must check if other batches share that exact same defect. Think about it. If a defective batch was reprocessed and mixed into other batches, that investigation has to follow the trail relentlessly to make sure no other compromised products are out there. And this is a massive piece of the puzzle, the explicit mandate for a pharmacovigilance system. This isn't just an internal customer service exercise for the company. Manufacturers must legally loop in the licensing authorities if there are serious quality problems, faulty manufacture, or product deterioration. You have to process those adverse drug reactions and forward the reports directly to the authorities. Transparency is strictly legislated. Now, if that complaint investigation actually uncovers a verified, widespread defect, well, boom, we immediately hit the second safety net, Section 2, defective product recalls, which brings us to point 7. This is a rigid, step-by-step process. An authorized person has to coordinate everything with absolute urgency. They are required to leverage their detailed distribution records to pull defective products back. And we aren't just talking about calling the main distributors. This system has to be capable of reaching down to wholesalers and all the way to the retail level in the shortest possible time. Once it's brought back, everything goes into a secure, segregated storage area pending a final decision. But you can't just cross your fingers and hope the system works when a crisis hits, right? The regulations actually require the effectiveness of these recall arrangements to be tested and evaluated from time to time. It's basically a fire drill for the pharmaceutical supply chain. Manufacturers have to prove their distribution records are accurate and that they can actually seamlessly reconcile the exact quantity of drugs they delivered against what they are able to recover. Okay, so moving from reactive emergency protocols to proactive safeguards, let's look at Section 3, formal change control systems. This focuses on point 8, which aims to prevent those defects from happening in the first place by strictly controlling any changes. You see, in pharmaceutical manufacturing, a change isn't just tweaking the drug's recipe. It is the whole shebang. Updating your manufacturing software? That is a change. Switching out a piece of lab equipment, modifying a label, or altering packaging? Those are all changes, and under Schedule M, they all carry a massive amount of risk potential. Because of that massive risk potential, every single modification demands strict scientific justification. Any proposal for a change has to be drafted, reviewed, and approved by the appropriate units. Most importantly, the quality units. They use scientific judgment to figure out if the change requires additional testing and validation studies before it ever sees the light of day on the production floor. And the work definitely doesn't stop once a change gets the green light. After implementation, the manufacturer has to ensure all related documents are updated to reflect the new reality. They carefully evaluate the very first batch produced under this new change. Plus, if a change is critical, they have to throw the resulting product onto an accelerated stability program just to prove that the drug's shelf life and expiry date haven't been messed up by the modification. Let's keep things moving right along to point 9, which is Section 4. Contract production and analysis.
Outsourcing is an absolutely massive reality in modern pharma, and the regulations have built some incredibly strict guardrails for it.
To avoid dangerous misunderstandings that could literally result in an unsafe drug, a written contract has to clearly divide responsibilities. The contract giver is responsible for assessing the competence of their partner and making sure they know every hazard associated with the product. The contract acceptor, on the flip side, must have adequate premises, the right licenses, and the competent personnel to actually execute the work according to good manufacturing practices.
So here is a real game changer. There is a strict prohibition on unauthorized outsourcing. A hired lab or factory cannot just secretly subcontract the work out to an unvetted third party. Any arrangement with a third party requires explicit prior evaluation and approval from the original contract giver. The chain of accountability simply cannot be broken, not even for a single step. Which brings us to our final stop, point 10 of the main principles. Section 5, Self-Inspections and Quality Audits. This is the ultimate accountability safety net. This forces a company to rigorously turn the microscope on its own operations. They have to follow written instructions to uniformly audit their entire operation, leaving absolutely zero stones unturned. We're talking about reviewing everything from how the building is maintained and instruments are calibrated, all the way to how effectively they are managing the very complaints and recalls we talked about at the beginning of this explainer. But come on, that raises a pretty natural question, right? If a company is inspecting itself, how do we know they're actually being honest about their own shortcomings? Who watches the watchers? How does the regulation make sure this isn't just some corporate rubber stamp exercise? Well, to keep things honest, the rules stipulate that management must appoint a self-inspection team made up of objective experts who are familiar with GMP. And to really maintain that objectivity, companies are explicitly permitted and, frankly, often encouraged to bring in independent, outside specialists to conduct a true quality audit. Fresh, unbiased eyes evaluating the systems. And the timing, strictly regulated. These comprehensive deep dives have to happen at least once a year. But if a dramatic event happens, say a product recall or repeated batch rejections, that automatically triggers an immediate, highly scrutinized special self-inspection. The system demands that you figure out what went wrong, and you do it right now. This culture of auditing doesn't just stay inside the building either. Quality control is on the hook for evaluating all material suppliers before they ever make it onto the approved list. They have to look at the supplier's history, the nature of the materials, and their ability to actually conform to GMP standards. Because at the end of the day, your final product is only as safe as the raw materials you allow into your facility. There's a quote directly from the regulations that just hits the nail on the head here. It says the purpose of self-inspection is to evaluate compliance and recommend corrective actions. It's not about punishing mistakes. It is entirely about actively finding the gaps in your own armor and immediately fixing them. Management has to evaluate these reports and make sure the follow-up program actually solves the problems they found. So by interconnecting complaints, recalls, change controls, contracted partnerships, and rigorous self-audits, points 6 through 10 of Schedule M build this incredibly robust defense for the patient. But as manufacturing just keeps getting more globalized and way more complex, it leaves us with something to think about. Even with all these safety nets perfectly intertwined, where do you think the next great challenge in drug safety will emerge?